Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 17 of Down the Pub podcast, brought to you by Wolves of Westminster. With me, your host, Peter Simpson, who, of course, also runs the Haryan Gláeddyv channel and is contributor to Wolves of Westminster. I'm joined today by Patrick Timms, the editor of Wolves of Westminster. Hello, Patrick.
Good evening, sir.
So once again, it's a podcast with just me and Patrick. So once again, I think this is a week where usually we say you take out every other interesting topic and you hit these ones, but it's Davos week, WEF, and usually that's quite tedious. But this time around, there was the big backdrop of probably the most diplomatic ever, with Donald Trump looking to take Greenland. At first with money, and then with a tariff war, and he was also possibly saying by force. Anyway, at this point, he has backed down, but it was all a very interesting time, I'll say.
Yes, it certainly was. I mean, we seem to now have a deal hammered out with various other NATO bodies around sort of just using bits of it for military bases rather than just trying to buy up the whole place. So that seems to be where they've gone at this point. It looks as, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I did some research on Greenland. Most people don't know very much about Greenland, now do they? But no, look, they've got elected officials, they've got a parliament, they've got a cabinet, and so what would have happened to these people in those circumstances? But it looks as though he basically just wants strategic control of certain parts of the island, which is of course huge. And it's a bit like Australia in that, well, it's also huge, but people tend to live around the outsides of it. So I think what he wants is not necessarily to buy the whole place, because a lot of it he's interested, but he wants the strategic control of various different kinds of operations that could be run from those places. He doesn't want it to fall into the hands of North Korea or China or Russia. So he wants to do his own thing. Now, whether this was always going to be his end game or a strategic gambit to begin with, or whether he's just had to back down because people are like, hey, we actually live in a sovereign nation. I say sovereign nation, it's officially ruled by Denmark. But in terms of reign rather than rule, well, so is Australia, so is Canada by our king. But they do own it. So it looks as though if he wants bits of it, that people seem to be willing to, take the good with the bad on that score.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit more to Greenland than that. I mean, during my geology degree, it was seen as a case study for rare earth metals and minerals, because it does have deposits of that. The problem is that it's under about 500 meters of ice, so that's not exactly obtainable at this point in time. But with climate change the way it's going, with ice caps retreating, that could be a different story. But ultimately, yeah, I said this in my video, and the Spectator makes the point of it. On a flat map, it doesn't really look strategic. When you actually look at the northern hemisphere on it by itself on a globe, it's a pretty good strategic area for the North Pole, and certainly for a place for, as you say, if Russia get it, they have a stepping stone over to America, and then you're screwed on both sides then, because Alaska's obviously pretty much almost got a land border with Russia with the way it works. So
the sea border there is about the same as between the UK and France. So
it's just no one lives there.
I can see why we want it, though. I can see why, but then again, we also have the stuff with Canada.
They weren't happy.
Well, and Prime Minister Mark Carney, who of course used to be the governor of the Bank of England, actually came out and made quite a strong speech, the other day. And so I can see that, the Canadians are not going to become the 51st state of the United States. Greenland is not going to become the 52nd state of the United States. That is not what's going to happen.
No.
But if they can acquire strategic control, and of course, you have to contrast this with what Britain is doing on the world stage at the moment, handing over the Chagos Islands, and the US isn't very happy with that. So the whole theme in both cases seems to be who owns what land.
Well, the Chagos thing's really weird because I think everyone really on the right wing was following that quite closely because obviously our main question is one, why are we giving away land, and two, why are we paying Mauritius for the pleasure of taking our land? To which really the only answer seems to be Lord Hermer said so. You know, he went there and planted a Mauritian flag. Mauritius never had sovereignty over it, by the way. It's 3,000 miles away from it, and both were subject to British rule anyway. Um, Having said that, America or Trump obviously seems supportive of it, according to Labour and especially Starmer. And then it seems to be overnight, Monday pretty much, he starts saying, I don't know why they're giving the Chagos Islands away. You know, does the UK need money that badly? To which is also clearly he's not aware that we're paying Mauritius to give the Chagos Islands away.
Yeah, I mean and I believe he described the move as utterly stupid, and which it is. But Starmer does appear to still be obsessed with the whole international law thing, and because there was an order handed down, or opinion really handed down, saying, "Oh, you probably should give this up," he just seems to want to go with that. But so now the other things to do with Chagos are the leasing arrangement. So it's a 99-year lease, I believe, that would be retained, but we wouldn't actually have sovereignty over that territory. And again, in terms of people having an affinity, shall we say, with places they don't actually live in, I mean, look at the Falklands. Look at Gibraltar.
Oh yeah, I know a few Gibraltans. Yeah, God, they hate Spain. That's one thing I certainly know, and I can't imagine the Falklanders are fond of the Argentines either. So it's
well, no, indeed they're not. So, and you also have to think about what the impact is on the native Greenlanders, and they do exist.
Oh yeah.
You know, are they happy with bits of their land being parcelled out? I mean, what's going to happen with the democratic system? What's going to happen with the parliament? What's going to happen with all of that? You know, when you have, I mean, yeah, all right, nominally, yes, they are ruled by Denmark, but nobody seems to be asking Denmark what they think about this, by the way, or if they are, they're not listening.
Well, I think a little bit like Falklands and Gibraltar, it's a pretty autonomous area of the Danish Empire, if you will. So that's why nobody really cares. But ultimately, as we saw, 37 European troops were sent over to Greenland, more symbolic than anything. We sent one officer, and the Americans went mad over it for some reason. Sorry, you can't just take land like that without expecting some sort of reaction.
Well, I think they view it as their part of the world, and therefore not our part of the world, so we shouldn't be there. But you know, back in the old days, in the 80s, you just send over a gunboat. Just to
yes, Minister.
Yes, it is. Yes, Minister. Yeah, it is. And the fact is that was, you know, that was being satirised at the time tells you something. I always say to people, you know, look at successful satire to see what the actual political zeitgeist amongst the people is like, because if that is successful, then you know you've hit a nerve, you've struck a chord, you've done whatever you've done there.
Yeah. Oh, and it's I mean, we say it all the time, but it is amazing how that yes minister and prime minister specifically seem to last. But the other argument that's also been dragged up by the Chagos Island giveaway is obviously, well, Keir Starmer said, well, these Greenlanders, they should have a say in their own sovereignty. When it came to the Chagos, though, the Chagosians are completely overlooked. I mean, to be fair, none of them have lived there since the 60s. But it seems like a completely hypocritical point, which, again, you always kind of think Starmer tries his best not to be contradictory in that way. But I guess human rights lawyers will always be that way. I just always had this expectation that lawyers try not to be contradictory, but I suppose the law's contradictory in and of itself in some ways, so...
Well, so it is, and the important point there is when we look at in judicial terms, we might speak of precedent, that much is certain, but at the same time, actually a lot of judicial decisions that have been made are quite contradictory to one another, at least in terms of principles. So it's no surprise to me that people's principles vary depending on. It's almost like he's prosecuting a case, isn't it? Which is what he's used to. It's as though your principles vary or waver depending upon who it is that you're representing right now and whose interests you're representing right now. So it's perhaps no surprise, really.
Yeah, which, well, I suppose in one case he's representing his friend Lord Hermer in terms of Chagos, and then on Greenland he's representing, well, Danish interests, I guess, Greenland interests, just European interests, I suppose, overall. I mean, you did mention Carney's speech before, and obviously we also had Macron in Aviators making a somewhat similar speech, and their speeches seem to be, we don't want to live in a world of empires, we want to live in a world of basically mutual respect and almost the globalism we've seen for the past however many decades that it's brought around prosperity, there's no doubt about that, but at the end of the day did cause things like Brexit and is causing a rise of right-wing nationalist sentiment in basically every country. I mean, let's face it, the only reason that Carney actually won in Canada is because of Trump's outrageous remarks about Canada and how he's probably thinking of annexing it, which obviously he's stopped talking about these days.
Well, yes, it is one of the cardinal rules of politics. You kind of follow the power and move with the zeitgeist and where things seem to be going, and that doesn't matter whether you're a populist or not. Even if you're not, you still have to follow what you think is your best route into power, and everyone will do that. Or if you're already in power, you're looking at how to maintain it.
Which is probably why they've gone a bit bunker mode in number 10 at the moment. I mean, bringing it back to Britain, we've had news yesterday for when this is released, of I can't remember the man's name now, the Denton MP, Andrew
Gwynn.
That's it. Andrew Gwynn has stepped down. I think it was just rumours earlier today, but he has actually officially stepped down. And the reason for this seems to be, and everyone knows it, it's to help Greater Manchester Mayor, that is, Andy Burnham, get a seat in Parliament to directly challenge Keir Starmer, because basically every other minister's tainted. Andy Burnham's a very popular man in Manchester for some reason.
Well, so indeed he is. One wonders whether those people will start to see him as a bit of a turncoat, you see, just following the power again, just like I was saying before.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time.
It wouldn't be the first time. But the thing is, I mean, obviously he's been an MP before, so it's not like he needs an induction. But the rumours swirling in Westminster at the moment are that, he'd get into Parliament and pretty much the first thing he'd do, maybe leave it for a discreet interval, but pretty much the first thing he'd do would be to challenge Starmer for the leadership. Now, if we look at prior criticism, quite justified really, of the Conservative Party, so we had Rishi Sunak lose a leadership contest and then end up as Prime Minister.
Yep.
So it's not the case that the Conservatives can't self-decapitate perfectly well and also, employ some, I would like to say, probably rather some shoddy practices in how all of that came about. But Labour doesn't usually do this. So if that is what happens, if there is a by-election, which won't be held until May, and then Burnham is an MP, and then he challenges Starmer for the leadership and wins it, then again we have, it's not exactly the same procedure, not at all, but it's just as dodgy, if you might want to call it that, in political terms. It's not, well, actually, technically people voted for Starmer in the last election. They did.
Yeah.
Not sure why they did, but they did. So,
well, because
Tories with Burnham.
Yeah, go on.
Well, then you end up with Burnham, and this is how people very definitely didn't vote for Rishi, but for a while, and they didn't vote for Liz Truss. You see, but for a while you had her.
Yeah.
At least the party membership did vote for her, though. And let's see what would happen if Burnham was an MP and the Labour Party membership actually did vote for him as leader. If there was a challenge, because I don't think anybody's very happy with the present Prime Minister. So now that includes within that party. So we just don't know what's going to happen there. But it's just one of those things. It's been widely rumored for a long time, and now it might actually happen because somebody's managed to cock up and therefore have to go, and that frees up a seat.
I mean, we're not even. I mean, I remember when he was at the Labour conference, and he was there trying to ruffle feathers and what have you, and then left early, and everyone was posting that meme of defeated male leaves because he didn't even last the last day, I think. Because ultimately we don't really want a leadership contest. Look what happened to the Tories, blah blah blah. Well, Starmer's not improved since then. The only kind of green stamp on his record so far has been his relationship with Trump. Well, now he's ruined that because Trump's actually paid attention to what Britain's doing internationally. And so from there, why keep him about? But, will he be replaced with Burnham? Because ultimately, Burnham has to be selected for this seat. The NEC is quite unlikely to do that because a lot of them are pro-Starmer, according to Westminster sources anyway. So they'll probably just put some other Starmerite in. How's that going to then work? Well, is Reform going to win Denton? Because it's actually a three-way neck on neck pretty much with Labour, Greens and Reform. Basically means that you're going to get tactical voting one way or the other. And I mean, imagine Zach Polansky versus Andy Burnham by-election with Zia Yusuf. That could be incredible.
That would be very funny. Yeah. To see how it plays out. You'd have to look at the local demographics as well and voting intention. But with all of that said, I mean, the thing with the whole Burnham thing is it's been rumoured for a long time. But at the same time, sometimes in Westminster, the longer things are rumoured, the less likely they actually are to take place. Okay? Or even if they're attempted. Is what I mean. So we don't know whether or not that would actually work. Now, what I'm also not sure of is whether or not I think if he stands for election as an MP, I think he can hold off resigning as mayor until after he is elected. Or if he isn't, well, he stays on as mayor.
Yeah.
So in his eyes, he hasn't really lost anything.
No. It's not a risk, really. He's got nothing to lose. He'll still, if he wins or loses, he'll still be massively popular in Manchester for some reason. So I guess the B network really is good. I mean, I moved away from Manchester once he got the public transport sorted out. I don't really know the details on how he did it. The only people I really hear singing its praises are when it's been in the news recently, and that's about it. So I don't think it's really made that much of a difference, to be honest. The tram system was always pretty good, for instance. But either way, I mean, well, we're speaking on politics of here as well. Obviously, we've had the defections from last week, and we're still unaware of who this Labour defector to Reform is going to be. A lot of people are saying Kate Hoey. She's denying it whenever asked, so not that means it's not her. But I think the way she worded it once was quite funny. Which was she was asked if she was defecting to Reform, and she replied, "Well, I'm not defecting in the same way as people think someone is going to be defecting this week. So it might not be her, but it depends how trustworthy you find her answers there."
Well, yes. I mean, people typically don't play their hand until they have one to play. So that's a possibility. But yes, those rumours are swirling in Westminster as well. Another one, I can't reveal this source, is telling me that Suella Braverman has already signed a defection deal to Reform, which was also widely anticipated. We have yet to see whether that will play out. But if that happens, it actually won't really be news, because I think people sort of...
Well, Jenrick's gone over now. Suella, makes sense.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, which is still there's still a question of how did you not do anything to sort immigration out when you were both in the Home Office at the same time? But ultimately they're on a road to redemption there. Would I necessarily give it them? Not necessarily, but well, they're there now, so we'll see how it goes. Well, it's not yet officially anyway. And even Katie Hoey's a bit of that's almost non-news, because one, she's been independent for over a decade, and two, she's always been friendly with Nigel, so that makes a lot of sense as well.
It does make a lot of sense, but things in Westminster are always upside down. So who knows, really?
There is that.
It doesn't appear as though Priti Patel is going anywhere, not at the moment.
No, I think Priti Patel's one that Reform very much don't want. She was the architecture of points-based system and the care visa with dependents that caused the Boris wave. So it's going to be pretty mad to have a go at the Boris wave like that and let either Priti Patel or Boris Johnson in. And they are very anti-Boris Johnson, but Boris Johnson hates them anyway, so can that make sense?
This is the thing. You have a party here now whose main policy is to destroy the Tories. So I don't know whether there's almost a degree of victory that they feel in winning various people over to their side of the coin. It's always kind of almost a statism there, really, is that yes, speaking as a major Trekkie, I'll refer to the Cardassian leader Golden Cut from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and half of the viewers at least won't know what I'm talking about at all. But there's a scene in which he is talking to one of his advisors, and he is saying that the true victory is to make people believe that they were wrong to oppose you in the first place. And his advisor says, and then you kill them. And he says, no, you don't.
They're on side,
Yeah, you want more people on your side because you've won them over to your side, and I can see a similar strategy playing out here with Reform versus the Conservatives.
Well, it was said at a branch meeting I was at by a former MP who I'll leave nameless for now. But he said in this meeting, when people were a bit, we're bringing over too many Tories and things like that, he said, well, part of politics is persuading people over to your side at the end of the day. It's not all about destroying your enemies and never letting any of them over. And, at the end of the day, you do want people, especially people who have experience in the lion's den of, all these offices and the Home Office, Foreign Office, what have you, dealing with the civil service. You do want this experience, which is, as much as I'm still a bit of a generic skeptic. Obviously, Zia Yusuf came out with a tweet saying, I'm glad he's here today, yesterday, for when this is released, so I feel a bit better about that, I suppose. But either way, you do want to convince people over to your side. It's just be forgiving, but also don't be too forgiving, I think, is what what might be a good idea here, because ultimately Reform are killing the Tory party, and there will be Tories who want basically vengeance for that. So.
Well, it is the message from history, isn't it, about keeping your enemies closer, but at the same time, you look at someone and you think, well, some of them, and you think, well, you're just basically thinking, I'm going to lose my seat if Reform stand against me, which they probably will. So I'd like to continue being an MP, please. That's what I'd like. I'd like to continue being an MP. So if this is my next home, then so be it. And as long as it's not, they're not going to defect to Labour, are they? They're not going to defect to the Greens. So they're going
to. They could go to the Lib Dems.
Well,
there's always that choice.
I suppose some of them maybe, but we didn't have that during the Brexit phase, didn't we? But crossing the floor of that.
Yeah, we had people going to Labour as well. Yeah,
it's very disrespectful if you do it, while the Prime Minister is actually standing up and making a speech, and you cross the floor very deliberately. You're making a very clear statement there.
Yeah.
But I think personally that the British public is really quite fed up of that kind of thing. So I think if people are making principled defections and they can demonstrate that principles are not just about keeping their careers going, And maybe the public will have some respect for them there, but if not, they will find that they will just be viewed as turncoats, and the public doesn't respect that.
Yeah, I will say I was on the ground leafleting over the weekend, and there were an awful lot of reform boomers, obviously, that I was, herding, we'll say, but obviously a lot of talk about defections and things like that. Everyone was very happy with the Generic defection, so I think that's going to be one of the more forgivable ones for the general reform voter. I mean, even I'm at a point where, yeah, I'll give him a decent chance because I have made scathing videos about him before, so it's going to be an interesting one because there's also who else are they going to let over, and there are some people that would never go over as well. Can't imagine. I don't know, some of the more wets, we'll say. I can't think of any names off the top of my head, but there's a lot of people who are very, very, very disgruntled with them at the moment as well. And even Liz Truss came out saying, who's pulling Generic strings, which almost everyone I saw thought, why are you being mad, Liz? Even Michael Gove put a GIF in there as well on Twitter, which I find quite funny because you'd think Gove wouldn't, react in that way, I'd say, to anyone in the Tory party, which he still is in the Tory party, I believe. So, and obviously the show's still going. So,
no reason to believe he isn't. And of course, Jerry, we had Rosendale. He went.
Oh yeah, Rosendale as well. Yeah. That was a funny one because that happened, and then 2 days later, everyone found out that he signed a letter asking President Biden to help with basically to hand over the Chagos Islands from the looks of it, or at least support the UN's decision to obviously that we have to hand it over. And now obviously he's very much against it, which again, politics about persuasion, but you do have to question what was going through your head at that point to ask President Biden for help there.
Well, yes, but I mean, I think people sometimes feel like they don't have much of a chance.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that a civil servant could have just put it in front of him, said, "Sign this, please," and there you go. It's one of those battles you don't really care about because who even knows what no one knew what the Chagos Islands were 2 years ago, so it is one of those things. Yeah.
But again, they weren't supposed to because this is part of it. People don't understand this about the Ministry of Defence. People think that it's there to fight wars. It's not. Its main concern is security, which means people not knowing things that they don't need to know about. The MOD is probably now quite brassed off that, the top brass are probably quite brassed off, if I may say it like that, that people even know what this place is, because nobody really was supposed to know about that and why it was there and why it being where it was mattered, and now people do.
Now it's international news that there's a big American air base on these islands in the Indian Ocean that no one really cared about. Or knew about it. Yeah.
So that will have brassed them off. But I think we have also the lost it. Where's it gone? We have also other people who either you haven't heard of or were just kind of young influencers, that kind of thing. Like Chris Rivers.
Yeah. Oh, he's got hundreds of thousands of followers, I think. But yeah, he defected. He made quite a scathing video, actually, that I found very agreeable, I have to say, because I follow Chris Rose, and things he says, I always think, I've thought for ages, why don't you just join Reform? And for a lot of people, we've said it before, politics is a big social club. Used to call the Tories like that Prosecco Tories, who literally are just there for a social club and not much other reason. But a few of them are coming over to Reform. I think Emily Hewitson also has been basically thinking, why don't I join Reform as well? But she's not made the leap yet. The problem you could end up having is that all these people that don't really care for the politics but are more there for the social side of it all end up in Reform, which is a good and a bad thing, because it's bad because you end up just being complacent with the party deteriorating, but it's also good because popularity, and you can get people of talent just by these influencers. So it is an interesting one, but again, it's the whole. I mean, you could say it's Generic starting the dominoes. I think he's just accelerating it. I think this all goes back to Danny Kruger. I think in hindsight, everyone's going to see that as the beginning of the end.
Well, quite possibly. I mean, it's, I mentioned it several times on this podcast before, but it goes all the way for me back to the that kind of climate justice thing and what Julia Harleybury has said about that. It's basically just their social life. And yes, this is right for a lot of people in politics. They have their tribe. They find their tribe. They use that for their social life, and then if for some reason they get brassed off with it, or it gets brassed off with them, well, I'll just find another one and repeat ad infinitum. It's a sad reality, but I think it is one that we have to consider.
Yeah.
So we have other things going on at the moment. We have the way that Labour is performing at the moment, the way polls are looking. Interestingly, Find Out Now was one of the polling companies represented by the British Polling Council, consistently puts Reform in the lead at something like 32%. Everyone else is saying something a bit different. So there are now questions that I'm looking into as to whether there is some degree of institutional bias there or not.
I think one of my all-time favourite tweets about the local elections last year is a similar thing was happening. Find Out Now would have not Tories, Reform on 30-odd%. I don't think they were that high at the time, actually. 28 or something, way higher than other pollsters. And then you get to the local elections and Reform get 32% of the vote nationally or something like that. And someone pointed out, like, even Find Out Now, who were always seen as the outlier for Reform are doing well, underestimated Reform's performance before the election. And so it'd be interesting to see what happens in May when it comes to that.
Well, it certainly will be, and that may also turn out to be the tipping point, possibly for Starmer's premiership. And people have been suggesting that quite a lot lately, that might be the tipping point. People have also been saying that about Kenny, so perhaps we should move on to Kenny Baton.
Well, I mean, I was going to bring that up as well, because a lot of people, at Christmas they thought, oh, done deal, she'll be out by summer, and then you get to the end of January and it's like, oh no, she'll be there till next election. And in my mind, yeah, that's probably true, but for the only reason of everyone to her right will have gone and everyone to her left loves her. Because at the end of the day, Robert Jenrick was the main threat. Who's going to replace her now? If I was a betting man, I'd put it probably on James Cleverly. But does he have ambitions to do that at the moment? It's hard to tell, really, because he does come out with speeches every now and then that seem a bit leadershipy. I think the funniest timeline would be, yes, there is a leadership challenge. Yes, James Cleverly does get in and then reverses some of the more right-wing things she was doing, like the ECHR thing and things like that. But
I don't actually know what his personal position is on that. I've met him several times, but I don't know what his position is on that one. There are reports that Farage and Cleverly are sort of, they're not exactly broskies, but they get on. Yeah, see, so that might be easier for a Reform Conservative coalition to form. So that might be the direction of travel that people are looking at. This is pure speculation, but that's what politics is about most of the time. So there are rumours swirling around of that.
But it is worth pointing out, though, that obviously everyone was going on about the Badenoch bounce after. Even Reformers I was talking to, everyone agrees she's very good at PMQs, but ultimately, what voter watches PMQs? Like 2% that are politically engaged. Is the rest of the country going to care? Probably not. I mean, I think certainly with mum voting, it's more of a how good a showman are you. Which is probably why Zach Polanski's got the Greens up quite well, but I think that's a bit of a poison chalice because he doesn't take criticism very well. And I think if you end up on like a leadership debate with like 7 parties in there or whatever they usually do, Zach Polanski is just going to end up hearing, what about the hypnotherapy and breast thing you were doing? He'll just keep hearing that and not stand it. Because even he came out with another party political broadcast for Twitter, where he was like running through a housing estate or something and just giving his typical, here are all the same talking points from leftists from 2010, rich getting richer and what have you. And my mind always goes to, how effective really is that? But then I keep hearing vox pops where people are repeating that sort of thing, and I'm like, well, it must be somewhat effective. I guess these people don't want to move on to, well, the 2020s and the conversations we're having now. But well, there we go.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you know, the thing with politics is if you can mobilise the masses, all you would need to do is keep repeating the same mantra, keep doing that, and why do they do it? They do it because they know it works.
Yeah.
On some kinds of people. So yeah, I can see that it's what I call the well, a lot of people call the midwit, or pseudo-intellectual style of politics, and that's basically what he peddles. But with that said, you can say the same thing about quite a lot of the other parties. I mean, Sir Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrats, we haven't talked about them yet.
What are the Liberal Democrats saying beyond vote for us if you don't like Trump and Farage? How does that split them apart? I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a Telegraph article basically asking what's the point of the Lib Dems? Because what's Ed Davey's message? I don't really know. He seems to be talking about disability benefits being too high sometimes, and then other times he's on a hobby horse. And it sounds like a lot of Lib Dem MPs are disgruntled because, in my mind, they're kind of in the perfect position where they're not tainted like Labour and Tories, but they do fill in the, it's not really a niche, but they do fill in the role of kind of sensible adultism, I guess you could say it is. You know, Tories are we're the adults in the room, austerity a bit. Oh, things are still getting worse. Can you fix that? No, we can't. I'll get Labour in. Oh, spending's too low. We'll raise it. Oh, inflation's going up though. Can you fix that? No. Oh, immigration's still high. Can you fix that? No. All right. Well, Lib Dems, what are they talking about? Pretty much the same things. Bit more Tory though, I'd say, than Labour. But at the same time, it's you're a bit worried about reform government and Donald Trump in the White House. Well, we don't like that either. Please vote for us. But they've not made any cut through whatsoever. Despite that, they're doing quite well with local elections. So it's
they often do. The Lib Dems are insidious in terms of creeping into local communities, getting councillors elected, and then they stand an MP candidate once they build up a local base. They always do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they don't have much of a policy platform. I think they might actually be being a bit strategic in the sense of saying, well, we've been kingmakers before, we could be kingmakers again. Apparently not realising just how much damage that did to them last time, but the electorate may have forgotten about that and moved on.
Yeah, I mean, it will be it will be interesting at the next election because, again, I'm even trying to think to the last election. What was their policy there? So I think I went through it the other a few weeks ago, and all I kept saying, it was very short. I remember that, and all I can remember thinking was, this is not that different to what Labour are saying. But I can't remember details. That's how boring it was.
I didn't even read their 2024 election manifesto. I did read the 2019 one, though. One about Jo Swinson was going to be the next PM, and then she lost the seat.
I forgot about that.
It was very, very funny.
Was that the was that the year of their dodgy graphs as well?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
What a year!
Yeah, it certainly was. But I don't even know what they put out last year because I wouldn't have been interested enough.
No, well, that's the funny thing. No one is, but then I think I pointed this out on Twitter. Obviously, Reform are now on 7 MPs. Yay! And I made the point of if they get 30 more, which I think to a lot of people will be too many, but if they do get 30 more, and assuming none go over. They get none from other parties, say, then Lib Dems become official opposition. That's not that many, really. I mean, I know it's a third of the party, but generally people are saying, a third to 2/3 of the Tory party should be in the Lib Dems, i.e. they're people we don't want in reform. So, I mean, that's easily enough, actually, to bring over. So,
I mean,
it would be an interesting one.
The Lib Dems as well, they have, 72 seats at the moment, so they've got the seats. It's just I don't think they have much in the way of a persuasive policy platform. But you never know; that could change if they come out with something. I mean, their competitive ground in the one, not so much the last election, but the one before that was rejoining the EU, being anti-Brexit, all that kind of thing. So there are still plenty of people. If you look at polling now, actually, about quite a lot of people are regretting the choice to come out of the EU. So if they stand on that platform again, I mean, it didn't work in 2019, but they might end up finding themselves still with about as many seats. So you just don't know.
The regret over Brexit, I think that's less of a we want to be back in the EU, and I think it's more of a I can't believe how much we've actually wasted of the opportunity. That seems to be more of what they're thinking, because who'd want to be? I mean, who'd really want to go back in the EU? I mean, from people I talk to, basically all it seems to come down to is freedom of movement. Which, you know, I do have a friend who could have got a job in Spain, but he couldn't get a visa there for whatever reason, and so didn't end up getting the job. He ended up with a better job as a result, but still, I still feel bad for him. But at the end of the day, you know, Spain can loosen their visa rules if they wanted to. It's up to their sovereignty and their choice whether they want you or not. And if we're in the EU, they don't get a choice of that. Yes, you are free to go over there, but obviously we were having the anxieties with immigration. I know we have lots of good things to say about the Poles, but there are also bad sides of Polish immigration as well that some people were not happy with. And then there was the threat of Turkey as well, possibly joining. But, you know, as time's gone on, even The Guardian, an editorial from their economics editor, had to come out with a think piece probably about 5 years ago now saying, listen, we're not actually going to win the Brexit argument now or the rejoin argument based on economics, because as it turns out, Brexit wasn't actually an economic disaster. It was just kind of meh. Nothing. It's certainly not the cause of our problems at the moment. That is all pretty much self-inflicted now. You can't blame the EU for that. And then obviously beyond that, you had shocks such as the pandemic and Ukraine. Okay, fair enough. Bit of hyperinflation because we paid people not to work. That's a mistake. But beyond that, yeah, as I say, it's, you know, why is our welfare spending so high? Why is our military spending so low? You know, a lot of that welfare is basically pensions that basically everyone under 40 doesn't think they're getting one anyway. This is why Reform are popular, because they're talking about some of these issues and hopefully will change them. And especially, it sounded like that in the bits of Nigel Farage's interview in Bloomberg that I was listening to. They're also, it's a shame Peter Barnes isn't here, but they are going to be focusing on full policy platform this year. So hopefully, I'll be happy by 2027 when a lot of that's complete. You know, assuming they do it. So,
well, I'm hearing similar things out of the Tory party as well. I think they've been galvanised a bit by Kemi's recent performances at PMQs, but also the actual concrete decision at conference last year of things like the ECHR and that kind of thing. Now, then, it's not really a case of outreforming reform, it's more a case of actually announcing something that's concrete. If she continues along those lines and she does set out a policy agenda, which I imagine probably is set for this year, then again, we may be seeing some other things from the Tories. We'll have to see what the polling reflects in respect of that.
Well, I mean, even speaking of the polling, I mean, the Badenoch bounce kind of went from, they're at lowest 14% and now they're at highest 18%, something like that. I mean, okay, that's an improvement, don't get me wrong, but they're now going down again from the looks of recent polls. So it's, you know, how much is policy announcement going to help with that?
Well, I mean, she didn't really get much of a honeymoon period. She didn't really get much of a bounce just by being elected because she didn't really put out a policy platform. I think she's thinking if she does it as close as she can to where the next election is going to be, then she might get somewhere. That's just my thinking. I haven't spoken to her about this, but that's just my thinking. And sometimes parties do this, and sometimes they do drag themselves back. I mean, you remember, well, I don't know if you do remember the famous John Major moment, the soapbox moment.
It's one of those things that I always hear about.
Yeah, during the 1992 election campaign, the Tories were, you know, wildly expected to lose that election, but suddenly they unexpectedly won it again. And, you know, a lot of what that came from was the fact that they suddenly, full of policies, started, standing up for stuff, and in the end, that held them. Was they were in power at the time anyway? After Thatcher, that held them the election, and so you never know. I can see Kemi trying that same sort of tactic again.
Yeah, they're not going to do nothing, are they? I mean, the thing is, so far, I mean, we've talked about this pretty much every podcast since, but I'm just thinking, what were their big announcements at conference? Stamp duties going, but not really, and more apprenticeships, and nobody cared. So it'd be interesting to see where they go next time.
And the ECHR.
And the ECHR, that was the main one, yeah. Sorry, not the main one. The main one was stamp duty. ECHR did cut through a bit, but again, it always does come down to the question of, well, if I want people who are going to source immigration, stop the boats, leave the ECHR, and be a bit more nationalistic, why am I not going to go with the man who for 30 years has been saying that, to his detriment to in a lot of ways? It's also made his career in others. Certainly, it seemed risky anyway. I think a lot of people can appreciate that. Why not go with him rather than the person who, Kemi Badenoch's been in politics since 2019. Was she elected?
Good question. Not on my radar, that one.
Well, I think if she wasn't elected in 2019 and was there beforehand, she was a backbencher and then hopped in through different ministerial roles, women inequalities being one, trade and business, what have you. But even back then, I was somewhat happy with her and thought, oh, she could be prime minister one day, and it probably wouldn't be too bad. But then she becomes leader, and I've not been impressed since, I have to say. But she's got a difficult job, so I have to
it's got a difficult job. But the counter argument to that one is to say, well, would you rather go with the man who has only had any MPs for about a year and a half?
Yeah.
You see?
Well, yeah. This is the thing I always hear from certainly my mum and dad. I'm worried about their experience, and does he have a team? Very Dominic Cummings. What Dominic Cummings keeps hearing in his focus groups. Well, now you've got Danny Kruger. You've also got Robert Chemrick. You've got Rushendale. I don't think Rushendale's ever been on the front bench actually, but certainly Kruger and Jemrick have. Who else are they going to bring over? Well, hopefully people with experience, people who are on board with the project, and well, then it's a case of, because Kemi's only been leader about as long, not even as long as Nigel Farage. So at that point, Nigel Farage does have more experience with MPs.
And the trouble for the Tories as well is that they are hemorrhaging some of their own experience. Not all of it, though, but they are hemorrhaging some of it.
That is true, yeah.
And they have a limited number of MPs now, but we just don't know what fortune. Well, they do say fortune favours the bold, but basically, therefore, depends on just how bold various people are going to be.
Yeah, I will say when it came to leafleting over the weekend, did run into a few Tories, and they were throwing everything at it. They had certainly had in my area way more people than us, all knocking on doors. Every time someone answered, even if they were just iffy on voting for them, they were still saying, "Can you put this vote Welsh Tory in the window, please?" I think I only saw one person actually do that because my route was kind of following them, just to kind of keep an eye on what they were doing. But they were, at first it's shake hands, say hello, good luck, whatever, and then kind of the rest of the time we were leafleting, they were just not really talking to us, and a couple of scowls and things like that, which I don't really blame them for. At the end of the day, it's Reform hemorrhaging their votes more than anything. But it's clear that they still have that network of foot soldiers. I will say, God, they're even older than Reforms, though. It has to be said.
It doesn't surprise me demographically, but they Labour did the same thing. They know where the base is. Although I'm not actually sure they do still know where their base is as of these days.
Well, it's certainly in Manchester. That's undeniable. Thanks, Andy Burnham. Liverpool seems a bit iffy, which I never expected to see. Liverpool is Labour till they die, really. I have been asked before why that is, and I never really have the answer properly. Usually Hillsborough comes up, but I don't know how true that is. So I mean, most of the North was anti-Tory for ages because of the mines, obviously, but then they all vote Boris Johnson, so anything's possible in this turbulent age of politics.
No, that's right. I mean, you've got, in the shires, you have like home counties, so people died in the wall Tories because they always have been, and then you also have the same with Labour. I remember the former site manager at one of the schools I used to work at, and she was in the 60s. She just said, "I'm working class. I vote Labour." That's it.
Just there's people like that, yeah. I go to uni. I'm voting Green. It's one that I see quite a lot. Basically, everyone I know who works at a uni is voting Green, which is mad. I mean, it's mad to think about because of all 5-party politics, but of all of that, those parties, Greens seem to be the least intellectual. I don't think that's unfair to say. Maybe you could probably make an argument for Lib Dems, but I think there's. I mean, having said that, I heard a Lib Dem MP on The Spectator talking about that article I talked about before. What's the point of Lib Dems? And he knew his John Stuart Mill. I'll give him that, which I don't expect anyone in the Greens to know about. Might be a bit harsh on my end, but they certainly see. I mean, there doesn't seem to be much intellectualism in. Let's just say what we've been saying for the past decade and hope it works. But then again, as I say, Lib Dems are saying that even from the people who do know the John Stuart Mill. So it's a bit of a weird time as I keep thinking about. People seem to know their stuff, but not really want to do any sort of thinking beyond the paradigm we've been in for the past 20 or so years. Everyone has to be a Blairite to some degree.
Yes, and of course, what we were just mentioning earlier, the whole Davos week thing.
Well, I mean, perfect example. Trump. I mean, Trump's kind of brought it on himself by being so bombastic as is his style. Completely reneged on it all. That is a win for Europe, and obviously that's emboldened them to. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. Then, ultimately, we probably are going to have to stick together to some degree if America's going to be this flaky. Plus, it's just a good idea anyway. But then you've got the other issue of the Europeans don't really like us, so. Maybe it's just a case of, let's really ramp up the defence spending then. Maybe we're on this, maybe the only people we can really trust is ourselves, and obviously we have temporary allies, which has always been the case. So.
Well, I mean, I've worked closely with some people who've campaigned on defence issues before. Yes, we do need to ramp that spending up. The question is whether the money is going to come from is the short answer, and nobody really seems to know. And Labour certainly aren't very interested. It would seem the present government are not very interested in that. They'd rather keep chucking buns at the trade unions. So it's one of those where somebody's going to have to come up with something credible as to, okay, it's all very well to talk in principle about, oh yes, we want to raise defence spending, we want to slash the size of the state, we want to do that. How are you actually going to do it? That's the question for parties, insurgent parties like Reform, and the Greens, in their own way, to answer.
Well, the Greens' plan seems to be just scrap all spending that isn't welfare or certain infrastructure. But even then, the infrastructure, I can only do it for wind farms. It does make you wonder why they aren't joining Labour, given the only thing Labour really are doing with any sort of pace is 2 billion or whatever it was subsidies for wind farms that Ed Miliband's obviously gone in for. And I mean, I even heard him on Times Radio the other day, and he was being asked, is this sensible? Because we're spending hundreds of thousands a day sometimes to turn off wind farms because they're overproducing, and all he could say back was, "Oh yes, but we just need more pylons. We need the infrastructure, the grid to be able to handle it." To which then the question is, how much is that going to cost? It'll cost a lot. When will it be done? We're working on it now. It just doesn't have answers to any of this, which is why I mean, I really do think, and I agreed with him at the time, but when Nigel Farage said net zero is going to be the next Brexit debate, I can see it. I mean, realistically as well, who even, where's Greta Thunberg these days? Who's talking about the ice caps melting and polar bears dying and things like that? The environmental debate seemed to just collapse overnight when Labour got in. It also happens to coincide with USAID losing their funding in America, but to take from that what you will.
Well, I think for some people, as long as they're convinced they've got a progressive government in charge, maybe they, or at least an ostensibly progressive government, maybe they feel there's less urgency because now the evil Tories aren't in charge anymore.
Well, there's that as well, but even then, I get nobody seems to be celebrating Ed Davies' achievements. You don't see people. I mean, what the protests were. The other problem actually is because of Gaza, really. A lot of people who were protesting, and you see them on camera all the time, who were protesting Just Stop Oil, instantly moved over to like Palestine Action, and now half of them are being done for terrorist charges, which you should expect. So,
again, though, it's like it's like I said earlier about it being their social life. It's the generic cause to support that sounds nice, sounds virtue signaling. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's the climate, whether it's Palestine, they'll just go and do that.
I've just while we were talking, I just had a thought of where are the climate lot these days. So I decided to have a look at the man who created about 4 of those movements, Roger Hallam, because he has a YouTube channel. He seems to have taken up talking about religion, why the secular world has failed. What? Is the Christian grift moving over to the leftists now? I know Russell Brand did it, but this is really odd.
He will flit about with causes that keep his reputation up and keep him in the spotlight. Basically, he's one of those. He always has been. He's a very dangerous man.
Oh yeah. Well, he got released early from prison as well, which I didn't realise till it was. So I say too late. I can't do anything. But he was supposed to be in prison for 5 years and only served about a year and a half. But I mean, just how ridiculous this is. I mean, I've got not to toot my own horn, but I'm getting more views than him these days, which I never used to. But 10 months ago, he made a video called "We Are Going Extinct," and now he's just talking a load of religious stuff. Which I am a good Catholic. I go to church and all that. I'm getting really fed up of all this performative Christianity. I mean, that young Bob, every time I see him on Twitter and he's doing a video, he's in front of a wall of about 50 saints. I think it's the same with Nick Taccone, and whenever Tanconi, and whenever he's on Dan Wootton or something, he's always, we need Christian nationalism, and he will always say patriot rather than patriot, which I always find funny as well.
Of those 3, I've met the first 2. And, yes, I know what you mean. But it does seem to be a thing. One of the other people we have liked to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Before put a tweet out saying, in order to be British, you need to have British ancestry and you need to be of the Christian faith. And you think, so all the British people who are atheists, for example, are they less British?
Apparently, I mean, I'm not being funny, but I think it was something like a third of Jewish men took up arms in World War One for Britain. So this isn't World War Two where they had a bit more of a direct interest, but World War One. And I guess, yeah, you're not British patriots. No, you, I don't know, I guess you were mercenaries or something. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense, but there's this obsession. There's this obsession with making Christianity explicitly political, and I hate it because there's no teaching of Christ that's explicitly political like that. What do you think render Caesar's what is Caesar's means? It's very irritating because his teachings were about the metaphysical plane, if you want to put it that way.
Sometimes I think people just feel the need to have a flag, whether physical or metaphysical or metaphorical, to rally around.
Well, I suppose it's you went on a was it 2 weeks ago? You went on a monologue about just make your own identity. It's up to you to make it, and it can be influenced by groups, obviously. But if you are just an NPC for a group, it's like I'll always remember Jordan Peterson chatting to Helen Lewis on GQ magazine for an interview, where at one point he just says he hears a couple of feminist talking points from her. He's just like, it's boring to talk about this because he basically calls her an NPC. It's like, I know everything you're going to say and I know your opinions. And then she says, "Oh, but I actually have a bit of a weird one on divorce." It's like, okay, with a couple of caveats. Then it's is the point. So it's but I mean, I even put on Twitter, I'm getting really fed up with this performative Christianity because I'm still completely unconvinced these people go to church. I'm completely unconvinced because most people who go to church are left wing, in my experience anyway. So you got to go there for different reasons. Do not go there for political reasons. Every now and then you get a petition to sign about abortion or euthanasia or something. Fine. That's a bit different to you have to be Christian to be British or English, whatever he said.
Well, quite so. But like I say, when people are searching for identity, and what we see from this discussion is that you get the same thing on the right, you also get the same thing on the left, whether it's the climate or Gaza.
Yeah. I will. Yeah, I mean, I've always subscribed to horseshoe theory, but 2025 to 2026 has been the 2 years where I think it's been completely vindicated. It's unstoppable. It comes back up every few months because it's just so blatant. I'm actually really interested in what Roger Allam has to say now, so I might listen to it after this. But it's
there we are. I mean, with that said, though, as my mother often likes to remind me, the pendulum does swing back.
Yes, quite.
And it is beginning to swing back now. Mm-hmm. You get the same thing in tech, cloud, that kind of thing. The pendulum is beginning to swing back. People realizing it.
Yeah, Microsoft are panicking about AI. I mean, I hate Copilot. I recently got the latest version or the latest edition of what's it called, Visual Studio. It just installed Copilot on everything, and I'm like, stop! I don't want Copilot Git. I know how to use GitHub, thank you very much. I do not need Copilot for it. What are you doing? And they're basically openly saying now, well, we've put $30 trillion into this. We don't really know what to do with it though. And people on TikTok are making the point as well. There's skits of like developers talking to managers and things like that, and the manager's like, "Can we put AI into this?" And developers are like, "Why? What do you want it for?" It's like, "Don't know yet, but we'll find a reason to use it." And it's that is the AI bubble. I have worked in research in AI. I could not tell you how it's any different to just standard software development. And how is a search engine not an AI? I don't get it.
They have AI on search engines. Well, Google does that. I mean, look, it can be useful when it's 1 a.m. and you're like, "Why is my code not compiling?"
Yeah.
You haven't closed that for loop. Okay, fine. Because my eye faded at this point. That's what it's handy for. It's not handy at coming up with actual ideas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a sort of thing. As someone put it this way of, you won't have software developers anymore because of AI. But someone said, "Oh, you won't have you won't have a construction crew anymore because you made the pneumatic hammer." Like, no, it's a tool. It's not. It's going to replace people who are doing remedial tasks, like all automation does. But it's not. You still need the human input of the idea, the innovation, the entrepreneur, if you will. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the AI bubble pops, because I really do think it will pop.
Well, the analogy I always use is Mrs. comes home and says, "Oh, can you? I've got this nice new painting. Can you hang it up for me?" Well, I will go and get a nail. I will go and get my hammer. I will use the hammer to put the nail in the wall. But then afterwards, I'm not going to say, the hammer put the nail in the wall.
No.
Because actually, I mean, technically it did. But, it wasn't going to get up by itself and do that by itself, was it? I used my knowledge of how to use a hammer without ending up with too many bruises to put that nail in the wall. So I will say, I have put the nail in the wall. And this is the thing about tools.
Yeah, exactly. And AI is just that, but for software developers. And it's one of the most useful tools, I do have to say. It has saved me hours. I will give it that. But I'm struggling to see how AI video works. You see these people saying, "Oh, you won't have actors in films anymore. Everything will just be made by AI." And then they use an example of something that's clearly just been taken out of a Marvel film and they've just changed the skin of, basically. So it's an interesting one anyway. Having said that, AI video has come a long way. But I've mentioned this before. Nobody's really actually been worried about deepfakes for about half a year. Do you know any story about any deepfake that's been convincing to anyone, or has run away and you've had to have a load of people on the BBC fact check it or whatever? No, so there seem to be misplaced worries with it as well, and just as we get over that, AI seems to be over-invested to basically help software developers make software they were making just a bit quicker. So there we go.
Like I say, with AI and that kind of thing, the trouble is the cat's out of the bag now. Yeah. So the trouble is now, in terms of imagery, for example, deepfakes and that sort of thing, because nobody trusts anything anymore. The impact has, in fact, been that sometimes things are actually perfectly genuine, other people don't trust either because they don't want to believe it because it goes against their own personal, unconscious bias. Someone said, "Oh, this must have been deepfakes."
Yeah. My counter argument to that is I still argue with people about the moon landings who do not believe literal footage we have of it. So that's been a problem before. I think we'll get past that, luckily. But
on that case, let's end on the very, very funny tweet that I'm afraid I haven't got right now, but with the Flat Earth Society.
Is it the Globe tweet by any chance?
It is the Globe tweet, yes. We will follow us around the globe, all of that kind of thing.
Say it again, but slowly. Yeah. It is one thing I always ask about flat Earthers, like why is every other planet round? Why is it just ours that's flat? And there's never a good answer. There can't be. It's really annoying for me personally because I know the surface level arguments, obviously, but I did geology as well for around Earth. So I know the really deep lore, quite literally, of the Earth, how it has to be round, how we know it's round with all the evidence, and it's basically all to do with earthquakes. But look into that for yourself. I won't bore you for 2 minutes explaining S waves. Right.
Well, all it really does, though, is it shows you that people find their tribes, and this is just what we were talking about before. People find their tribes and they stick with it because it's something to do.
Quite right. And I hope lots of people join the Wolves pack as well.
Welcome, as long as you're not terrible. That's how my editorial stance has always been.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, my first piece of writing was out last week, so yeah, there we go. Minimal editing I saw, so that was good. Just don't write like an academic paper.
Yes, yeah, that is one thing you have to learn about journalism. Maximum 2 sentences per paragraph, ideally.
There you go. Right, so we will end there now. So with that, thank you very much for joining me, Patrick.
Thank you very much as well, sir, and until next time.
All right, yes, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.